Yeah, again, welcome everyone to Leiden Museum. My name is Ghebreab. I'm the co-founder of Afrispectives. Woo! Yeah, and this is Beylula Yosef. She's the other co-founder. So for the people who don't know, Afrispectives is a Dutch-based organization for and by people of African descent, and not just in the Netherlands, but worldwide. And what we aim to do is create spaces where people can meet, exchange, support each other in different kinds of ways. So you can think of stories, you can think of creativity, knowledge, education, entrepreneurship, and we're doing this by facilitating these kind of meetings as well. So this is why we are super happy and very humbled to have a beautiful panel here who are going to have a very constructive conversation as well, talking about envisioning new institutions. So let me just, before I introduce the panelists here, I got a question I want to ask you. And the question is, what brought you joy today?
Well, what made you smile?
And what made you smile today?
This morning my daughter was woke up. My daughter of 1 made me smile this morning, so it's the happiest feeling every morning actually. So yeah.
I'm not sure if I can top that, but I just had a massage. It was really nice, so that made me smile multiple times.
It's kind of a weird reaction to the song, but anyway.
I was actually moaning.
Yeah, for me, I think it was, I saw somebody sent me some pictures of a vacation I went on recently. That was really good. That made me smile.
Well, one of the things that made me smile today is the sun. That always makes me really happy. Next to my daughter, but she's not happy at the moment. Look at that. Michael?
So we give the mic and you can share the mic. So I'm going to agree with Beylula. So the sun made me smile today as well. So for the people who've been here, stayed here this summer, we had a horrible summer, so the sun is something that's very encouraging, but also just looking forward to this conversation right now, right here, with these beautiful people and with you all here in the audience. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. So without further ado, let's start by introducing our wonderful panelists. So next to me is Saud Jama. He's an entrepreneur and the founder and owner of the clothing store The Other Guys in Amsterdam. Yeah, Saud, he struggled with getting a job, basically. I'm going to get into the how and the why, but what he basically did is said, if nobody's going to hire me, never mind, I'm just going to do it myself. So with that, we're very happy that you're here, Saud. Next to him is Malique Mohamud. He's the founder and director, writer of Concrete Blossom. And next to Malique is Seada Nourhussen. She's the chief editor of One World magazine, and not only the chief editor, she's also the license holder of the only black woman license holder of a national magazine in the Netherlands. So yeah, just give a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you. So I'm going to go to our first slide, and what we're going to do, right? We have a quote, and I want to ask all the panelists to let it sink in and reflect.
Can I add something to the introduction?
Oh, of course.
I just want to explain why we chose them to be here. It's because there's a lot of talk about creating our own things and that we have to support our community, and there's a lot of discussion and a lot of talk, but these people don't just talk the talk, but they've walked the walk, and I've seen how hard they worked to where they are. A lot of things backstage where people, you see them here smiling and giving their talks, but they work so hard and they inspire us to be better and to do better. So thank you for being here, making time for this, because I know how busy you are.
That being said, let me follow up on that one as well, because the title is Envisioning New Institutions. And the theme of this year, Leiden Short Festival, was also about reflecting on last year all the social issues that are here in the Netherlands regarding racism, discrimination, social exclusion, etc. So they asked us, Afrispectives, if we wanted to contribute by hosting one of the panels, which was about institutions. So we took a good look at each other and we said, yes, we would love to be part of this, but on certain conditions. And the conditions is that we're not just going to talk about the experiences with regard to the pain and the sorrow and the struggle that people have to deal with in the institutions, whether it's education, whether it's in businesses or other organizations, but also looking forward and also reflecting on what are great examples that we see in our society right now. We can see a lot of talented people who are doing the hard work, who are doing wonderful work, spreading great messages about inclusion, diversity, where people want to talk about and think about. But how do we look forward, and how can we use and reflect on great examples right here, right now, to envision these new institutions? So that being said, let me go to the first quote. So these are the speakers. And the first quote, and some of you maybe seen it already in the description of today's panel, it's every single thing that touches your life, religious, socially, and politically, must be an instrument of your liberation, or you must throw it into the ash can of history. So you can let that marinate for a second.
Anyone wants to go first?
Start with the poet.
Oh yeah,
The story of my life. Yes, big question, but what? First of all, thanks for the generous introduction and the honor of being here. Usually I don't like doing this shit anymore, sitting talking about stuff. But if Beylula asks me, then I show up, and not so much so reluctantly, but you show up. But today I haven't seen you in a while, so that's lovely. I haven't seen Seada in a while, but also met new people, so that's already a win. And let me try to approach this question or this statement. This is a huge one, but what caught my attention is liberation. And yes and no, because being focused on liberation implies that you're focused on a struggle. We were a voting booth, stemlokaal, which was the first time in Dutch history, maybe even in world history, that people could vote in a nightshop. At least I think it's in Dutch history. And what we try to do is dream up, imagine what an institution would look like that does dope shit. That's basically what it is. So it happens to be doing some resistance work or liberation work.
Yeah, I think yes, was it yesterday? No, the day before I was at a Rima Road Festival, and there was an opening talk which was interesting, but at the same time, it was a lot about. There were 4 women writers, a few from Germany with migrant backgrounds, from Turkey, from I think Iran, I think Nigeria, and 2 women from France, one with I think Vietnamese background, somebody was, and one was Chinese. And each and every one of their, well, they did a reading, and each and every one of their readings was from the starting point of how they were viewed by white society. And I felt so tired after it, because it felt like, exactly like what you're saying, it felt like that's the lens we're supposed to see each other through all the time, which then implies that we're always resisting, that everything we do, every choice we make, every creation we have is in resistance of whiteness, when I really believe that we exist and have existed for centuries and for centuries outside of that. Just because we were placed here in this country for many different reasons, maybe voluntarily, maybe involuntarily, but it doesn't mean that our being is then centered around whiteness. And I think this event you're trying to that you're having here is also about becoming your own center. And becoming your own center means that other people will gravitate towards you, and you determine, and just like you two said, okay, we want to contribute, but on our own terms. These are our terms, these are our standards, these are our, so I think that, just like Malique said, and like the first question, what brings you joy? I know that Malique sometimes thinks that I'm very reactive. In a way, that's what journalism is, of course. You react to what happens in society. But I did learn along the way, because I started out in white institutions. I started out with big newspapers where I was always the only black woman there. But I don't think I was playing the part of the only black woman. Do you understand what I mean? Like, if that's what you're doing all day long, then that's what you become, and that's what you then, decide to create, and that's where you, of course I did, when I used to be the Africa editor for a big newspaper, and I did feel like I had to correct some things that the previous Africa editors that were all white and mostly male, some of them were female, but it wasn't because I wanted to correct that work, it was because I felt I needed to set a new standard for how you report on Africa from my point of view, where I don't call the Africa Institute in London or the crisis group and then have a bunch of white people working there from Nairobi to analyze Africa. That was not normal for me. So it's more about, I guess, setting your own norms and then becoming the norm, and just let other people figure out what they want to do with that. But I think that's more that what we're trying to do, even though it's not easy, even though of course you have to somehow, position yourself towards what the rest of society is doing or expects from you, or whatever. But being in resistance constantly, I think, is something that more and more people are realizing is not the way out, or is not the way to be, or is not the way to, to have longevity, I think.
And how do you keep yourself sharp in staying centered in, like you said, a field that is very reactive to to what happens in society, and so many other newspapers are already writing about it. I know One World is not it's not fast journalism. So
no, we do produce every day, but I think what we do is we talk about the things that are not talked about. So there's really no use in trying to imitate others or trying to compete with others. I don't have the workforce or the amount of people to do that. So I try to go back to what I am curious about. So for instance, right now there's a lot of writing about Afghanistan, and when you look at Dutch media, it's mostly about, are they coming this way, and how many can we evacuate, and if they help the Dutch government or not, and are they worthy of a place in this society? But I'd like to go back to, where did this all start? Why do we think it's normal for Afghan people to have these cycles of refugees, So for instance, one of the things that's hardly ever talked about is the amount of natural resources that are found in that country, and that could actually be, an accelerator for, electric revolution, and how nobody's talking about the international interests in that. But no, we'd like to keep it like towards religion and politics and Taliban and women in burqas. That's the narrative, So yeah, I always try to look at what me or my team are interested in. So it's kind of like an authentic choice instead of going like, okay, they're doing that, we're going to do the exact opposite, So I guess, yeah, that's how we kind of operate.
Well, for me, I can keep it short. I would change the last sentence. I would say keep it, throw it in the trash can, and just create your own society and your own, like what we're trying to do here, just your own vision of what the world should be. Living in, for example, in the Netherlands, because I've overcome a lot of racism and a lot of prejudice in my life while studying, while working, whatever. So now I'm just tired of trying to keep up and living up to other people's norms. So I would just throw it in the trash can. That's my answer.
Quick response, what you said, living up to other people's norms, and these norms shift continuously, right? And one of the things that every now and then I might switch to Dinglish or Dutch, because I've talked a lot of English this week, but something that is mij opgevallen, that we've seen the emergence of a wokeness industry. I'm from Rotterdam, and I think it's 10 or 15 years ago, any self-respecting white institution had, with an opening or a social event, had to invite some breakdancers to open it up, or a brass band, right? And or something other ethnic, and that eventually became the spoken word artist, and now it became the decolonial critical thinker, and this whole industry and even the algorithms feed and incentivize being reactive. So I think we should be conscious. I think for journalism, there's a different conversation, and I'd very much love to have that conversation, because it's an interesting conversation, as in what and when does it constitute or legitimize being reactive and when not. But I think that's a different conversation. But I think we should all be bewusst on the fact that these norms continuously shift, and be aware of the bubble that we're in.
How do you see that norm shift in your own?
It's cool to be woke now, right? It's some people's whole business case, which is good. I'm for us getting monies. That's, but I think it's also, in some sense, a trap, because critiquing these systems and being reactive legitimizes the same structures that you're critiquing, right? So throwing it in the trash can and building anew is something that, being a hip-hop baby, hip-hop inspired me to do so. This whole DIY thing, we've been doing this thing. People been doing since, right? So I think becoming the norm is something that is innate, is life. But at the same time, what helps me and keeps me sharp is being aware in which instances we're already the norm.
And Saud, what was your vision when you started your store?
My vision was to show all the young black people how they can start their own business, do their own stuff, and not being reliable on other institutions or other people to do their own thing. And especially in the neighborhood, because it was a black neighborhood, and then gentrified, and a lot of course, people with money came in, and things started changing. Of course, I took advantage of that, because why not? But I wanted to keep it like, not like a white only the men's clothing store, but for everybody. So not should be a rainbow. So everybody should go there and find something that they like. That was my message, basically. That you're all in a bag of M&Ms, every color. That's how life should be.
And how did you come to that decision? Because you were
well, I have a lot of friends of different ethnicities, like from Moroccan to Dutch to Somali to whatever. So of course, if you grow up with those guys, then you know what their different cultures are. You grow into their family as well. So you get inspired by that too. You can take that along with you in your life, and I think you should take advantage of that, and that's when you become a stronger person. Yeah, and that's what you can tell other people, and my kids, of course, not only choose your own people, choose other people as well, based on their kindness to you, towards other people, and help each other. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's interesting. Also, what you just said, Saud, about creating your own center that people would gravitate towards you. Because here it says also everything that touches your life, religious, socially, politically. And you're all doing your own thing in different realms, whether it's journalism, whether it's art, whether it's entrepreneurship. But how do you create this new norm, especially if you have been conditioned by this white gaze, by the institutions that you work in, live in, navigate through? Where do you get your inspiration from? Who do you spitball with? Who do you rely on politically, socially, or religiously to create this new norm that you are building your own platforms with right now?
One of the guys is sitting right here. He's one of my close friends. I talk politics with him, I talk religion with him, but I also talk going home, going to our own country again, Bones, and seeing how that is, how it's changing in a good way. Of course, also my other friends, Dutch friends who are in banking or in what sector you want in, every sector, city council, everything. So I think you should surround yourself with people who are on your own level in certain perspectives. Not, of course, you can't agree with each other on every level, but just find fill the middle, like Malique said, I would say. And I think you should start from there. Yeah, and then always people come on your path that you can rely with and have some good conversations with. Yeah.
Let's switch.
What was the question again? Sorry. Where do you get your inspiration from?
Yeah, like politically, socially. If we're talking about creating new norms, so new standard and center,
yeah.
Is that something you do by yourself, or do you surround yourself with ideas or other organizations or people?
Yeah, I don't think anybody exists in a vacuum. You know, we're all inspired. I'm inspired by Malique. I'm inspired by you too. I mean, you shouldn't. We're talking about us, but you're doing the same thing actually, right? With Afrispectives, with other projects you're involved with. But if you say new norm, I actually come from a very old norm. You know, I consider myself the norm. I always have actually. Also because the norm that is set for me in this country is really, it's no use for me to try to become that norm. If you're, you know, if white male dominance is the norm, then I'm a black woman so far removed from that it's really no use for me to try to become that or to be that. So I think, I think whiteness was never really the norm for me. Just that when you get older, you start education, and the education system starts molding your mind, and and starts telling you what the norm is. I don't think it was so much resistance, but for instance, in school, you're told which books to read, right? Or which you get like a reading list of recommended reading. I would always choose other books, because I wasn't interested in those books. So, and they couldn't really tell me that it wasn't up to par, it wasn't the standard, because these were books that my teacher might not know, but that I found myself, or maybe through my sisters or or my brothers, and if you ask me what I was inspired by, I think I was inspired by a lot of black culture. You know, like Malique, I grew up listening to hip hop. I would like stay up till 2 in the morning to find some type of weird radio station where I could find music that I could relate to, you know, and tapes. That's how old I am. I'd be like, you know, two fingers, like, and yeah. So books, music, movies. You know, like I went to an all-white school, but it didn't. I always knew that I wasn't really part of that culture, not necessarily completely detached from it, but I had my own lane at the same time, even in school, even. So yeah, I'm inspired by many people. I don't think any of us haven't been touched by either our parents or our grandparents or our family members. I think a lot of us have migrant backgrounds, and just, you know, surviving in this country is already, somebody's showing you things, you know. Somebody's telling you how to survive, how to be, how to keep your dignity, how to sometimes resist when people ask you to do things that are not of your norm, you know. So yeah, I think there's so many countless, I mean, you know, Queen Latifah, Oprah, even Oprah, you know, with her commercial face. But anyway, it was, you know, Janet Jackson, all types of women mostly in my part. But yeah, I think my mother, my sisters, and I think they've always shown us the way, you know, all along. Sometimes you think I did it myself, but that's not really true.
What she said, what he said. Let me just reiterate a few things. As in, I use these examples often. As in, I grew up watching my mom watching the news and getting frustrated and zapping, and whether it's CNN, BBC World, NBC with the dish back then, and even before Al Jazeera. And I always used to ask us and watch us, why is she getting worked up? And she would kick game. She would, basically, my mom's couch is where I used to get my first political science classes, right? I remember the O.J. Simpson chase. Now I'm revealing my age as well. As in, I was quite young back then, but I can recall moms watching that shit, and I used to look, why, what's happening? And she used to take out the time to explain what was going on. And I'm Somali, Muslim, so there's always this sense of paranoia growing up. Watch out, they might take our passport and send us back. Right? Don't trust these people because XYZ, blah, blah, blah. And at first we went to, I went to 2 elementary schools, and the first was an open bar of infidels, people that don't believe in God. As in atheistic primary school, open bar at Basel. No judgment there, obviously. But mom thought, no. I can't have my kids at this heathen institution. No, you'll go to the Christian school, because at least they believe in God, right? And eventually I used to, every morning they used to read out of the Bible. And I thought, hold on, I know these stories, and y'all telling them different, like what's going on? And they used to go home and say, Mom, they said about this, that prophet, that this, that, blah, 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 blah. And their mom used to give our version. And that taught me how to understand different types of texts and different types of faith systems, right? Used to steal cassette tapes from my brother's room, Wu-Tang, CDs. I broke his, entered the 36 Chambers CD, which I'm not sure if he ever forgave me for doing that. But all those experiences, all those lectures and sermons by these philosophers, also known as rappers, really shaped the way I viewed life in the world, right? And helped me navigate the Netherlands, right? And to round that off, in the night shop, what we try to do is center these types of knowledge. And I'm currently theorizing the source, building forth on the work of contemporary philosopher Gucci. And as he taught us, be wary to get lost in the source, right? And so I can continue on talking about what source is, but I understand it as a form of embodied knowledge, and in the hood it clusters and clustered, and this natural resource which is extracted and refined and sold back to us in commercials, of Foot Locker, Snipes, or whatever, blah blah blah. And but what we try to do is set in the source, use the source in the ways we see fit. Sometimes refining it, sometimes just living it. And an example of that is a friend of mine who is extremely experienced in the informal economy, doing extra legal work, and basically he's experimenting with the universal basic income without calling it as such. He gets, I think, 1,000 to 1,200 euros from the government. I won't name the program. And he works in a shop of friends where they all work in a horizontal way. Everyone gets space, and it's a holocratic organization model, one could call it, which he, before Corona, used to make an additional 1,000 euros, and he has his extra legal work doing other stuff, which he has a few plays, few customers, and makes another 1,000 euros. So this dude clocks in a net 3,000 euros a month, and has this ability, this capacity to shape his life in a way he sees fit. That's dope. That's game. That's knowledge. And what we try to do in the night shop is center that and talk about that, and also play with language to be able to view these types of skills and knowledges as, in different ways.
How do you get these young people to come to the shop? Because all three of you are doing, creating your own things, but I also don't want to romanticize it like it's for, like everyone can just go and start a magazine, or it's it all has to do with, you know, how you grew up, who guided you, what study you did, maybe not always, but your network, and there are people that don't have the network or don't have the access to how do you work on making your work and your shop accessible for people that might not think it was for them?
Great question. We were pondering on that, as in, okay, how are we going to make the space accessible for people? And we have lettering on the window, right, on the facade, and it was like a couple of weeks before the opening, and we thought, oh shit, we need something on the window, but what? So started cracking our minds, and eventually 3 lines came out, and in the middle of the window there's written, it's, by the way, Schiedamse Rotterdam. Come by, buy some books, buy some t-shirts, buy some whatever. And the first line is your underground embassy, the second is Research Center for Urban Culture, and the third is Anti-Gentrification Test Site. And which kind of sums it up, but we can change it at any given moment. But we thought that's a lot of fancy talk, right? As in, how are we going to take it back to the streets in some sense? So on the top of the window, there's written, the beste toko for alle dreries and dlerets. And it's really interesting, it's not even written, it's like way up there. and people mostly look up and start smiling. But as we were, as we were thinking of, okay, that was a way for us to
changing the language.
Changing the language, and the facade is an interface, so that's the nexus where you communicate and an exchange. The first exchange happens. And but I was talking with a friend of mine, Nigel, techno DJ, producer, Cape Verdean dude, really dope. And I showed him these texts. I said, okay, but what's your reaction? And he asked me, but who's behind the counter? And I said, yes, but it's this sentence and which one should go up or down? He said, oh, but who's behind the counter? And I wasn't listening to what he was saying. And then he said, okay, I get that, but who's behind the counter? We didn't even figure that out because it wasn't part of the plan to open up a shop, right? So now we have these shifts of everyone in the team taking turns when the shop is open. So I told him, yes, us, I guess. So don't worry about it. Because people won't, and he was right. People don't. If they look, they see the corner of their eyes and that catches their attention, right? But most of the times they look and then they come inside, and after walking past a few times and they all ask a question. I don't want to take too much time, but this is really interesting to see how this theme, the way people react. They usually ask a question with a certain tone. They say, but what kind of shop is this? As though they've been asking themselves and pondering and saying, what's going on here? I recognize this, but what is this? So eventually they walk through the space. So, like, within the first 5 meters, people take ownership of the space because they recognize, they automatically say, but how come you don't have Poms? How come you don't have Hawaii? How come you don't have this product?
Because it's full of products that they recognize, right?
Yes.
Can you name a couple of the products that...
I think the people that are familiar with the products know which products they are, right? It's shit you find in a toko or in a night shop. And but that's on one side of things, but at the same time, everyone is living life and busy. So what we just kicked off yesterday is a program where we link makers and thinkers and organizers and doers from our hood, from different generations. Some are architects, designers, formally trained and not, and basically the plan is, what we kicked off is this program where we reimagine the public space in a specific square of it's called Bospolderplein, and we have 6 youth with an average age of 23 or 24, and we all urban culture aficionados, whether it's music or fashion or different types of forms of cultural production, and link them with a Cape Verdean guy who's an architect, and work together to reimagine neighborhood. And those types of programs are ways to get them in. Every Friday we have DJ sets. We just built a barbershop in the space. So there's different ways of people to, on the one hand, you have this all dope stuff, this well-planned and organized stuff. But on the other hand, we just wanted also to be aware and organize and facilitate just gatherings. So you can get your drinks, you can buy your Lucy cigarette, you can get your fade touched up now, so that you...
That's nice. What about One World? How do you...
Drawing.
And it's, I think what most people don't know is it's not just a magazine. You also do other stuff.
Yeah, okay, so I think it's good to note that my journey is a bit different from Malique's and Saud, right? Sorry. Saud, sorry, thank you. because, so this was an existing title and an existing magazine that I started out as chief editor with as an employee. I'm just going to give you like a very short recap because it's a kind of a complicated story, but so I started in 2018 as I was just asked to become the chief editor. I used to be a journalist for a Dutch newspaper for a long time and a columnist. So I became chief editor. Then the past 3 years there was a lot of so that was the first time they became independent, because before that it was a totally subsidized magazine. If you would take the magazine it was and what it looks like now, it's totally it's not recognizable at all, because it used to be very much about development aid, about it was subsidized by Dutch foreign ministry. It had a focus. It was kind of like a professional magazine for people in the sector of development aid. And throughout the years, it kind of shifted towards it was the effects of Dutch politics. 3 cabinets of right-wing politics meant a lot less money going to development aid, which meant that the subsidy for this magazine was going down. So they had to change course. And that's when I came in. They became independent. And I liked it that way, because I was never going to work for a magazine that was subsidized by the Dutch government, because to me that's not really, independent journalism. So, but I did find the title interesting because it had made a shift already towards not just about white saviorism and white people doing, but the previous chief editor had already set in an example where she was like, okay, so it's not just about problems over there are problems, the same problems are here. So she'd already, put in columnists like Quincy Gallo, Munganyende and Cristel. This was all something that happened before I came in. But I thought there's still a lot of opportunities for this magazine to become a lot more prominent in Dutch media, because I was working for titles that were part of a monopoly, where a lot of the Dutch media had become more right-wing. That was something that was bothering me more and more, and I saw an opportunity for this magazine to take a few more steps to become very outspoken when it comes to anti-racism, when it comes to climate change or climate crisis, I should say, human rights, identity, to really, kind of capture a niche. But then, that's what I did for the past 3 years, and then last year the board announced that there was no money left. Basically, everybody was fired, including me. So I was like, okay, I did my part. World is kind of, it's changed. I think I proved to myself, or maybe to others, what I could do with the title, but I'll let it go. And then all of a sudden there was an investor that came around who said, I want to take over. And then I was like, okay, that's weird. Who's this guy? So I started to look into who he was, and I kind of figured out that if he would take over, everything I worked for the past 3 years would be kind of, would disappear, because I saw his track record and it was really the opposite of what we were doing. So I asked the board, I said, well, if this is the route you're going to, then just have me as a contestant as well, to be the new owner. And I had about 2 weeks or something to figure that out. And that's when we kind of, we competed with each other. We both put in a proposal. And I kind of knew that it wasn't going to be about money, because this man had money, I don't. But I have the ideas, and the ideas are mine. It's my product.
Most of the time, that's what happens, right?
Exactly.
You have the money.
Exactly.
So
yeah, how did that work?
How did that work?
Okay, so I think what was in my advantage was that for the past 3 years, I became the face of this magazine, not because I wanted to, but because nobody else was being the face. So a lot of it was riding on me. So I think that if people would hear that, and a lot of new subscribers, maybe like yourself, like you, maybe there's some people in the crowd or not, Who knows? But
Who has one world?
hey,
Yeah.
way too many, way too few. But it's cool that you're here. Yeah. Do you like it?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
It's really difficult to say no.
You can ask me a question later. No, but
Don't like just
blink 2 times. Yeah. So yeah. What I think so the new investor I think kind of gambled that he could get me on board, and I already said that I wouldn't. So I was like, either I lead or I leave. It's not going to be like, I'm not going to work for you. So yeah, because I had already been in a situation where I was trying to make changes, and I was, I had a board to answer to, and I was like, if I'm going to continue with this, I'm going to continue with this on my own terms, like we talked about. So there was no reason for me to stay.
Which is a very like in my introduction. It's not just to give them compliments that I said that inspire me. It's that most of the time this is what happens. It happens behind the scenes, so we don't see it.
Exactly.
But this is what happens. They ask the person that's the face to be part of the institution, and that's how it. And
and I definitely recognize that this was a moment for me to kind of break that cycle, for me or for maybe for others or whatever. I don't know, but I did think that either it becomes my project or I distance myself from it, and I knew that would become a problem if I would leave, because I think a lot of people associated me with the title at this point, the title it had become. So if I would leave, there would be an issue with the image. So that was, I think, my leverage, for them to be like, okay, so this guy has a lot of money. It wasn't a question that there wasn't any money. It's just that it needs to be spent very differently. So, and I had a plan for that. And there was another, I must say that, I kind of said that in, it was kind of, in the spur of the moment. It wasn't really thought out. I didn't know how to run a business or how to do this. But I do think that when you take that first step, people come to you, right? So John Henry Clarke, who was a very experienced business consultant and media guy, he heard that I was going to do this, and he was like, "Are you serious about this?" And I said, "Yeah. I mean, why not? I mean, I'm going to be jobless anyway, so it's not really, there's not like a huge risk for me or whatever, or I'll just write that book that I was supposed to write 5 years ago." So yeah, I do think that, it's about network, it's about knowing people, it's about something you built in the past 20 years in my case, right? So it's not like, oh, I just appeared or whatever. I've been working for a long time, so you do build a certain, even though I haven't proven myself as a, even when I started out as a chief editor, I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to lead a group of people. I didn't know how to be a manager of people's ideas. I managed my own ideas, up till then, or maybe a few correspondents. But, I didn't know how to be a director of something. But I think it's also about just, it's not like the other people are geniuses or something,
Not at all.
No, exactly. You quickly find out when you come to that position, you're like, really? You have been doing this for so long, you can't do anything. It's very interesting that you kind of find out that these people that you looked up to are like really incompetent, So I'm like, well, why shouldn't I be the one? So it's a matter of realizing those things and the ideas that are put before you, that everything is, it's inachievable, it's not for you, or whatever. All those things, it's also a matter of just saying, yeah, I'm gonna do it, and you might fail, that might happen. I don't know if this is gonna work. It's not even a year yet, but we managed to bring back the print magazine, bigger and better than it used to be. So I think it's about, kind of, even though a lot of people will tell you that you're not the one, or it's not for you, or people that look like you don't do those things, about just taking that first step, and then you actually see other people moving, and coming towards you, and be like, oh, maybe I can participate, or maybe we can do it together. And because John joined me, after that I was like, okay, this is like easy. It's gonna be, of course we're gonna win. Like, you know, he doesn't have any ideas. The ideas are mine. So, and I think that also realizing the immense value of your ideas, and also owning those ideas. That was actually my main thing with this, is that I was not going to give away my creativity to other people anymore. So it was either going to be my creativity that I own, and I might fuck it up, you know, but at least I did it. It's not that I was dependent on other people that decided for me what route my life is going to take.
So,
yeah, I think those were perfect closing words for the first half, as in, especially what you said about knowing the value of your own ideas, but also owning them. That last part is very important, because people are very happy to take your ideas and run with it, and put your face on top of whatever project or whatever they want to do.
All the time, right?
All the time, and that's like
Yeah.
breaking these barriers. I think we have like beautiful examples of people who are doing that. We ran a bit late, but we want to have like a little break so you can stretch your legs, get something to drink, and we'll be back in 15 minutes. But please give a round of applause for the first half. Okay, welcome back. Yeah, so in part one, you listened to like the different experiences, but also like how Seada ended explaining, sharing her experience, how she navigated through the world of journalism and how she gave into one world, being the chief editor now with her own vision and working on that vision and mission as well. But I wanted to ask Saud, since your clothing store is called The Other Guys, could you just share like how she came to that name? Why The Other Guys?
Why The Other Guys? Well, it's my life story actually, basically, because I came as a refugee. Well, my parents did. I joined them, of course. And I was always the other guy, because I was the only black kid in the half VWO. So yeah, I don't need to explain to you what that means in a small village where I grew up. And also in Amsterdam, yeah, I came when I was already paralyzed, so that was kind of hard for me to pick up my studies again, and because that does something to your brain. Picking up study, learning everything, and it was hard. It took me a while, but I managed. And after that, I had to find a job. Couldn't find a job, so at some point I was like, yeah, well, F this shit. I'm gonna do my own shit. And there was the clothing store because I like clothing, and so I just started writing a plan. And the banks were like, whoa, looks so professional. And I was like, yeah, I know. But still, they didn't give me money, so I do it on my own. And it's also part of my customers. I want them to show something else than what other shops are buying and selling. So
What are the other shops selling? What makes you different?
I think it's just basic, like blue jeans, great sweaters, no different brands, just the basic Dutch brands like all the big brands that you probably know. But so I wanted to move away from that, and I wanted to attract my own people as well. And so that's why I chose a few local brands from Amsterdam, and well, that sells well to local people, of course. But unfortunately, most of my customers are still middle-aged white men and young guys as well. But my own people don't buy from me. I don't know why. So because that's kind of interesting, because people always tell me, well, your friends should buy from you, but now I've learned you shouldn't rely on your friends, because there's so many more people that want to give you money. And while your own friends don't.
Please continue.
So there's like a million other people who can make you rich. So don't depend on your own kinfolk to come and spend money on you. So that's basically the name of The Other Guys. And because I'm paralyzed, I'm the other guy. That's my story actually, in a nutshell. Yeah.
Thank you. It's not necessarily funny, but you make it sound so easy. Like, I went to school, Like I first for a job, didn't work out. And I just thought, hey, let me start my business. I wrote a plan, went to the bank, they gave me money.
They gave me money.
They didn't give you money, but I thought it was professional.
They like the plan, but they didn't give you money. What was the reason?
I think skin color and now backing from parents with money or whatever. I don't know. It's always like that.
So how do you have rich parents?
I just started small, like not too big, small business, small shop, and just a few brands, and then started expanding from that. And it was my parents and family just gave me some savings, so it was not a lot, but I could start from that. Yeah,
because even a small space in Amsterdam is expensive, right?
Oh yeah, I started.
Give us some insight.
I started 6 years ago, so that was different, and also depends on the neighborhood, of course. Like I said, it was gentrifying, but it wasn't as gentrified as it is now. But now the same building would be like twice the price. So I just started at the right moment.
I'm really eager to ask what's the price.
But
You can ask them later.
we're going to talk later.
That's the inside information.
Inside information, yeah.
You want to come down?
But that's the most interesting though.
Yeah.
But I do got a question, because you just said like, okay, the store is in a neighborhood that is gentrifying, or maybe already gentrified, and talking about making your organization or your product accessible as well, so changing the language to reach a certain target group that look like you, maybe can identify with you as well. How do you make sure that your store or your clothing is accessible for people who look like you?
We have hip hop 24 hours a day in shop, so that makes it work. Yeah, I think. And of course, yeah, we have some brands that I like. Like we used to sell daily paper, and of course that was a really hot brand when we started, and it's even hotter now, I think. But so that's when a lot of young folks came in to buy some stuff. Yeah. And now it's Jordan, so yeah, we just go with the flow.
I see, thank you. Are there other panelists who maybe want to ask or share?
Well, you said something about the magazine. Who reads One World?
Yeah, I think we should be honest about. I don't have.
Oh, sorry.
I think what you said about, you know, not relying on your friends and relatives and kinfolk, you know, if I'm honest, the people holding this magazine up are white people. Let's be real. The ones subscribing and paying, you know, a daily or a monthly fee and a yearly fee, who are donating, I think are mostly white people. Which doesn't mean that what I'm doing is for white people, or is, I think it's also about what you're doing might not be necessarily, you're just selling clothes, right? I don't think you're like, the customer coming in should be looking exactly like me. I don't know, is that your goal? I think in the case of Malique, it's about a very certain, a very specific culture production that should be owned by, you know, it's more, I think, more a sense of who owns and who produces and gets the acknowledgement and who gets the pay and who gets the, but whoever wants to take it. I mean, if a white guy comes in and it's like, yeah, I'd like some relaxer. I don't know what he's going to do, but, you know, take two. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I don't think you'd be like offended by that. But I do think that you're trying to create community as well. I think, in my case, I do want people that are underserved in journalism, that are underrepresented, that don't recognize themselves, to have a certain, you know, a title where they're like, okay, these are the stories I'm interested in, these are the stories but it also means that, of course, in this country, white people will be interested as well. And to me, they're welcome. And I think we should also be honest about, you know, who is, and that is also a case of, you know, of course, of inequality and access and money, and who has the means to pay a certain amount of money to keep things going. But I do think that is an honest conversation we have to have, and it's not easy, I must say, to get our people to subscribe to something like this. So I don't think that's a question of unwillingness or not interested or whatever. But I think it's also a question of how do you come in contact with it? Are these the subjects you're interested in, but also at the same time how it's brought. I do think that in our case we try to do a lot with language. These are things I've been working on as a journalist and beforehand, but I could do more with my own title, but at the same time it's still kind of highbrow, it's still kind of, it's a discussion that's not necessarily something that is maybe an everyday life decision, so I do realize that part, I guess. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add to when you said, most of my customers are middle-aged white men. I'm like, yeah, bless them, come in, do. Sure. But yeah, I think it would be nice if, of course, your clothing has a certain price. I guess that is not maybe accessible for everybody.
Now the thing is, what I have noticed that the people asking me if my clothing is certified, if it's real, it's like black people. I'm like, okay.
They'd ask you if it's real?
Yeah.
If it's not knockoffs?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like, would you ask the guy across the street in the white shop? Would you ask him the same thing? No. So that's why I'm like, why would you ask me? Why wouldn't you just trust me?
Right.
So that made me like think of, why would you even think of that? Did you go to a market or whatever? You're in the store now. It looks good, in my opinion, but the fabrics are good. So why would you think it's a knockoff? It's from the store to market or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm renting a space here, so I can't pay for that with cheap stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And overpricing it. So
yeah, I want to respond to that as well. Also, just from us, like from Afrispectives, it's true that it says African perspectives and it's sharing these perspectives, but also escaping the white gaze. And I think this is what you see here right now. That you have two products. If you go to an H&M or to a Zara, to whatever, and you see the clothing, whatever is being produced, whether it's Bangladesh or Pakistan, it's certified, it's good. And then you just come with a perfect example that people will question the quality of your clothing. They will say, oh no, that's too expensive, or maybe willing to spend the same amount of money like on another brand. So this is something that we have to change amongst ourselves. And also, if we're talking about these new institutions, whether it's a business, whether it's a design agency, whether it's a media platform, of course, it makes sense. We're in the Netherlands, we're in Europe, you have to navigate with other people, other institutions as well. What I'm wondering is, how do you make sure that you can deal with these kind of backlashes or people questioning the quality of, okay, if you look in a certain way or talk in a certain way, then the quality is less. And I want to ask you as well, Malique, because you said we're changing the language so it reflects the culture that are represented here in the neighborhood. Do you have any experience that people will react in a certain questioning way, like if you put the language out like that, that means it's only accessible for people who are from this level, because it isn't the white jargon, the language that we use, that we associate with sophistication or with high culture. Could you reflect on that?
What's the question?
If you notice by changing the language or the way you approach certain themes or topics that reflect or represent the culture from the street, that people who are in academia or in other organizations or institutions question the quality of the cultural production.
Let me try to approach it this way. At a certain point, I started to call myself a legend. Fuck it. Work hard, been doing it, been going at it, and these expectations, these social contracts that we continuously engage with in different settings, whether it's people that look like you or don't, or la la la, etc., etc. And one of the expectations growing up the struggles of growing up and mental health issues. The statistics show that black and brown guys show up 6 to 9 times as much in the statistics of mental health issues. And that reality, from my personal perspective, was in my late 20s was like really fucked up, trying to navigate this life and finding your way. And in the art I make, whether it's writing a mean 16 or whatever, I always try to push myself, and I don't write or make for the crowd. I write for those 13 people in the audience that actually know what's up. And then when we hear the verses, like, yeah, that's dope. That's what gets me going. So that's a level of rigor and challenging yourself that is part of my character, which was cannibalizing myself, right? And at a certain point, I got tired of myself, and I thought, okay, I know how to be tough on myself. I always use the examples from Huis. It doesn't matter if I told my mom I built like 3 pyramids this weekend. I said, but did you wash your hands? Did you pray? Did you this, that, and the third? So eventually I decided to flip the script and celebrate myself, because when I looked at what I was doing, the distance I've covered, I thought, I think it's okay now. It's okay now to be less tough on yourself, or at least celebrate yourself. And then I said, hold on, let's flip, do the reversal. Let me just call myself a gangster. Let me call myself dope. Let me celebrate myself. And all of a sudden, people say, no, hold on, you're not supposed to. That's not modest. And these ideas of what modesty should look like, these performances that usually, in my perspective, are meant to appease people and make people feel comfortable, make people feel safe. And to a certain extent, there's validity to it. But the way I live humility and modesty is being in service of those 13 people that I do shit for instance, or the other countless people that are moving through life as well. So, why I'm approaching the question in this manner is notions of respectability, notions of what is in which instance, with which language considered to be professional. The bank that gave you a sticker for your plan, but not giving you the moolah, is quite interesting, right? So that journey became part of an integratie journey, as in really embracing my ratchetness, and I profoundly think and do from the streets. And it's quite interesting what happens when you move as such, because people that look like you say like, oh look what you're doing. Sorry, I'm long-winded, I know, but this is a good story. It was in Antwerp. You were there, right? Yeah. It's scary at times, knowing what you're about to do, this public appearance, right? Was the University of Antwerp in Theater, Stadstheater, something in Antwerp. And it was about urban something, and it was this professor, I forgot his name, no shade, but it was this guy that wrote the book on super diversity, right? And Guillaume was with me, and we missed the train, or I fucked up, and basically I told him I can come, I'm in Eindhoven, but I need to catch a cab. Long story, less long, we arrived at that theater, and I was wearing my tracksuit. It wasn't intended, it was just part of how I moved through life. At a certain point, I refused to code switch, I refused to be niches or live up to all different types of expectations, right? And by that time, I think think the wildness, the savagery had been cultivating and bubbling for some time now. So after the lecture, the professor, the esteemed professor, dope guy of us, I got the opportunity to react, and my reaction, I started off with bang bang, bang bang, Rotterdam in the building, Rotterdam in the building, we're here. And the audience was filled with students, young students of different types of ethnicities, and some the older people were majority. Yeah? And it was interesting that it was this young black girl that was sitting in the front, and she was looking at you and like, what are you doing? Don't you know they're gonna take away your passport? Shit. And the other people were like amazed, like, no, like how in our theater, toying with our university. And it was interesting. It was interesting that afterwards I was continuing.
But this is part of your hustle. Let's just be real. Like, this is part of
Not
your.
everyone can do this.
Obviously.
Not everyone do this.
But it's a journey. So you don't wind up with that point.
You don't just become a legend. You just
Real recognize real, right?
real recognition. No, but so I think it's part of what you have decided that is part of your business, really. That you've decided that derailing things and disrupting institutions is just part of what you're doing, right?
I chose to do
And you chose to do so.
But I think
Exactly.
it's also, I don't know the
Yeah, well,
English word, but ontregelaars. I think
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
three
Yeah,
ontregelaars.
yeah, but so for instance, in my case, I'm not from the streets. You know, I could act like it, but it really wouldn't work. So
But you got some ratchetness.
I have a lot of ratchetness, but I let it out sometimes, you know, in very safe environments where people aren't taping anything. But
Oh shit.
like in a faraway city where I don't live. But I mean, it's like I think it doesn't always have to translate to like street or ratchetness or whatever.
That was my specific.
Exactly. So being not of the norm or being questioned can also mean that it's not just because, you know, you don't, because if I speak Dutch, people think I'm white, you know, on the phone or whatever. So I would appear in interviews when I was, you know, starting out, and they'd be like, so when is that interviewing coming? Because I spoke to somebody that was white, I think, you know, they wouldn't say that, but that's what they thought. So, and so it doesn't really have to be about the way you present yourself. It's just you being you is already, oh, wait, we have to kind of shift gears and be like, okay, what are we dealing with here? Are we dealing with somebody that's, you know, legit or not? Somebody that is of our standard or not? And in my case, for instance, what we try to do is, I've decided to write a manifest, a 10-point manifest when I kind of, you know, figured out what I was trying to do with this medium. And one of the things I said was, one of the first points is we're not neutral. So this is something that's very weird in journalism because all journalists think they're neutral. They're like lucid. They don't have ideas, or they don't have, you know, a reference, point of reference, or they don't have a baggage that influences whatever choices they make in journalism, which is not true, of course.
I remember one time going to Bakhuis de Zwijger with all these journalists from the Telegraaf, Volkskrant, and I don't even want to name all of the other ones, but one of the journalists said that he was neutral and that he was only being a mirror for society, which was an old white guy in his 60s. And I didn't even know what to say to him because it was so absurd what he was saying.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, no person is neutral in the first place, but being a white male, you're definitely not neutral. You know, you are representing the powers that be. You know, you should be very aware of that with every choice you make. So, and also a lot of media will never reveal their political, you know, unspoken political codes, because every newspaper, if you just look at, you know, their history, for instance, Volkskrant now might seem as a very, you know, kind of like middle ground type of, which I think it's very right wing. It's become very right wing. But like when I started out there almost 20 years ago, it was like this very liberate, but they're Catholic from, you know, it has a Catholic background. People don't really realize that these are the you know, the foundations on which they still make their choices and stuff like that. So, for instance, Trouw, where you worked for 12 years, is a very Christian newspaper. It's a very Seada newspaper. I don't know if you know the political party that used to rule this country for 80 years. So it tells you a lot about the choices they make, the people that they. But Dutch newspapers are not. Dutch media is not used to being open about that. For instance, if you go to the U.S., they will clearly say, we endorse this candidate during elections. It's very clear, you know, at least they're upfront about on which side they are. It doesn't mean that they're very transparent about everything else, but at least there's more of a transparency than in this country. So I wanted to break one of those, you know, those traditions by saying we are not neutral. We are not neutral towards injustice. So we're not going to, like, both sides, we don't do that. Right-wing politicians don't have a, you know, they don't get any stage or any, you know, any space with us. So these are just, but these are things that really are weird in Dutch journalism, like, and that makes them ask you. So the standard question I always get is, are you a journalist or an activist? Which is a way of disqualifying your professionalism. It's not a neutral question to begin with, you know, talking about being neutral. It's a question that is actually asked from the place of power and from a place where you're like endangered by somebody else, somebody doing things differently. Also, I think almost all journalists are activists because every story you begin writing or every comes from a place of what? Why is this the way it is? You know, it comes from surprise or you know, or some type of thing that you think is not right, you know. So it's not really that far removed. It's just that when you say that out loud, it becomes like you're messing with you know, with the status quo.
What did you learn? Because there are numerous media outlets that have voorgaan or have done it before. So it's pioneering.
Have done what before?
Arguably, One World is the first nationwide media outlet that said unequivocally we're not neutral, and that's experimenting, that's pioneering. So what were the learnings, or what were the fuck-ups along the way? What are the complexities of actually doing it?
Yeah, it is complex.
After this answer, we're gonna go to the.
It is complex because, and it's not an easy choice to make because it does. For instance, when you talk about, you know, expectations from, let's say, other journalists or, you know, the media environment, media landscape, it also comes from activists being like, you're not going too far. You're not there yet. You think you're there, but you did this and this and this wrong, you know? So by stating that or making that choice, you also put on a lot of burden on yourself. Like, you have to do it completely correctly, but, you know, we make mistakes and we acknowledge those mistakes. I think that's one of the things we also do that other media don't do. So whenever we are approached by people that read us or that are like, this you didn't do correctly, then we invite them to then tell us how they view things and maybe write a piece about it so we can take that on and use that to learn from. So it's also kind of humbling yourself and not being all-knowing, because in the end, journalists are not there to give answers, we're there to ask questions.
We lopen een beetje uit. Shall we go to the Q&A?
Could, but I do have like a final quote that I want to share, also with the panelists, but also reflect on what you're saying, because it's good to have like a little summary, because you're saying a lot, but I hear like being authentic and also be transparent in what you're doing, whether it's in media or like what you're doing. You're very clear in your message. Like this is what we're doing, this is what we stand for. If we make mistakes, we own it and we move on. And that's what you communicate with your partner, also with people who question you. I think that's very valuable and important to acknowledge and realize as well. It's not easy.
And also getting backlashes from every part, basically. Not just the norm, but also your own people.
Exactly.
Which, and I think also because you're doing something that many of us maybe don't dare to do, or maybe we're still getting our interviews in all these institutions that we want to get into, and you're facing us with something that's different that we cannot imagine doing. So it's also, I think, a war within ourselves. Like, what happens within ourselves when we see people creating something that we cannot even imagine?
Definitely. And again, coming back to the topic of today, envisioning new institutions. And why new institutions is because usually, again, I can relate to some of these stories growing up in a white space, going to white universities, working for an organization or company was predominantly white. Like, you want to stay true to yourself, but sometimes you have to make compromises, because if you don't, you're going to be the outsider, or it's gonna you're going to get the backlash, whether it's financially or socially or whatsoever. But how do we envision the new ones? And that brings me to the final quote of Mohamud himself. The future belongs to those who prepare for it today. And the question is, how do you prepare for it today? And not necessarily yourselves, but like, how do you structure it? Because the institutions are structures. They're structures, they're systems that can guide people, that can oppress people, that can do whatever. It's very powerful. But for example, that's why I want to ask you, since you work in different dimensions, how do you structure not just your institution, but what kind of partnerships are necessary to build this system with new norms, with new missions that are transparent, that are for and by people you want to see represented as well? Where it is maybe not just about representation, but just creating the opportunity to do whatever you want to do. So this is a question I wanted to ask you to reflect on briefly, and then we're going to switch to the audience, because we want to engage you as well, to ask questions or maybe leave a comment. So yeah, who wants to reflect on first? Saud,
for me, I'm trying to work with a lot of young guys who are interested in going into the fashion business, like creating their own brand or opening a shop, because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to open a shop, but where do I start? What do I do and what do I need? And of course, in the first place, they're afraid to start even, because what if you fail? Then people are more afraid to fail than to try. And you have to try before you can realize that there's no reason to be afraid, because there's another chance somewhere else. Because if you fail in one thing, you're good at something else. There's no reason to fight that out than to try. I think I said a lot of tries, but so for example, friends of mine are starting their own business now, and because I've been in this business for a while, I have some connections, so I don't want nothing from them, just giving them the, how do you say that?
Network.
The network, yeah, to start, and just email those guys to start your own, print your t-shirts or to print your own socks or whatever. See what you want to do and go from there. Because if I don't do it, then yeah, it's going to take them maybe a year. Yeah, why would I hold them back? If I can help them and they can help somebody else, and then the circle around. That's how it goes, and that's how we grow together, in my opinion. That's why I try to do with everybody who comes in the store, ask me a question about clothing and being a shop and opening a shop, especially as a black entrepreneur, because we don't have a lot of black business owners in Amsterdam who have shops. There's a few, but not a lot. I think there's maybe 5 or 6. I think that's way too many in the business that I'm in for a city as big as Amsterdam. And but now what I've also noticed is that people see daily paper and they think, whoa, I want that too, but they don't see what happens behind the doors, behind the closed doors. It's a lot of work, You have to be patient. You have to be able to fail and try again, and fail lots of times. And you have to be patient. And I think that's my message for somebody who wants to do something that's basically try to approach it.
Before they pick us up.
What makes it difficult is first I'm Somali, second I'm a dude, and third of all I think a lot about these things, so I try to be as generous as possible. But briefly is what I tried to in my research for the last couple of years. I've been trying to challenge the idea of what an institution is, first of all, in the first place, right? And I think this integratie man, maybe of integration, everything has to go up into this single entity, a social body, Dutch society, blah, which in turn created a parallel world in the buurt, the neighborhood, with its own lagoon, with its own laws and own structures, with its own institutions. So instead of having to start from scratch and reimagining or imagining, I think it's repositioning things that are already there. Cities are gentrified because of this narrative that there's nothing of value in these neighborhoods. But nail studios, barbershops, night shops, football pitches are informal institutions, right? There's this soccer pitch in the west side of Rotterdam where many great football players, known and unknown, and Wijnaldum, Champions League winner, captain of the Dutch team, but also street football, friends with Ronaldinho and all those. These are icons in their worlds, right? But it's all informalized. We can't see them and we're part of that process of informalization as well, because we're all trying to be part of that integration situation. So what I try to do is, because I like fucking shit up, I'm pushing the needle forward, is let's see if we can push forward the threshold of what we can call an institution, hence a night shop as a research center for urban culture. We produce systems, methods, models. One of the models we developed recently is the Tenaris Driehoek.
What?
The Tenari Driehoek.
Tenari.
He's already laughing because it's called in language. Tenari is Moroccan for flashpraktijken, but it made its way into slang. So if someone is shyster, he's committing Tenari, right? So there's this model, the Tenari model, which we...
Is everybody getting this? Because there's a...
Which is okay. So a night shop on Instagram, invite me for a lecture, and splash the moolah, and we finesse institutions with these models. That's what I wanted to say. So what we do is talk with people in institutions who most of the times have very boring jobs and do very boring stuff. And we say, let's do dope shit together. Fork up the moolah and let us do what we do. And then there's always this another different type of exchange except the money. But the money is 1, 2, 3.
So the question was, how do you prepare today, right?
How do you structure your new institution?
I'm not a very structured person, to be honest. I just do things and then I end up in situations. But I think, which is a structure, I guess, yeah. So what I usually, if I look at like what has happened in my life up till now, is that mostly I end up in situations and then I think about how I can turn this situation into my advantage. I think that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm partly about pick the system. The system is there where, I'm not gonna die fighting the system, sorry. I need to have quality of life. So partly it's like, okay, this system is here. What part can work for me, or for what I'm trying to achieve? On the other hand, you also have to be realistic about the limitations and who to maybe partner up with, and do that in a sensible way, but without losing your core, without losing your authenticity, without losing what is important to you. You need to really safeguard those things. Otherwise, you're going to be on somebody else's plan. So I think that's one of the things. If you're clear about why you're doing what you're doing and what for, then it's really hard for somebody else to shake you and drive you to a different direction, because you're like, you know what, my story is much more interesting. You need to get on my plan. You know, so I think that's one of the things. If you kind of have that for, you know, like envision for yourself, if you can articulate that to yourself and to others, then I think, you know, there's not much that can kind of derail you. At the same time, you have to be, you know, you have to eat. You have to pay your rent or your mortgage or whatever. You have to, you know, you have to buy good shoes. You know, we need all of that in our lives. But, so be sensible about that. I think, you know, I'm not, I don't want to suffer. Let me put it that way. I'm not in the suffer game. No, I want to live a normal life. I don't need to be rich or whatever. So, but like I said, I get into situations, I'm not thinking about money, but I somehow attract people that are like, we need to think about money, you know? So you need to kind of also gather people around you that are better in things that, you know, that kind of complement whatever you're lacking. Because it's also about a sense of acknowledging what you're good at and what you're totally not good at. And then trying to find people that can, you know, that can fill those gaps, and then together. And also not being afraid of taking on people that might even be better than you. You know, don't ever think about other people as competition. They can only, you know, you can only help each other become better. And I think that's, and especially, you know, like for instance, this group of people sitting here, you know, we all have similar backgrounds. I think it's very cool that we're sitting here together, discussing what we're doing, you know, and also sharing our experiences and knowledge with each other instead of, you know, sitting on an island and hoping that you make it. Yeah.
Thanks. Let's open for who wants to, after hearing all of this, who has a question or remark? Yes.
What would you change in the media landscape, especially looking at the big Dutch newspapers? Currently, I think they're not really diverse. Looking at the people that work up there, I don't know for sure, but I assume. So, what would you change? And maybe a next question is, what have you seen over the decades that you worked there that are like looking at how they see African people? How can you change the narrative, so to speak, as to how they see, how they look at Africa, and do you think that the narrative of how they look at African people, if that's like, does that create, is the picture real, so to speak?
The first question was, what would you change?
Yeah. Is there inclusion? Is it diverse?
No.
Okay, you already said no. Okay.
Like, no. Not at all. No, and for instance, all of the things, for instance, when you talk about language, one of the things I'd like to change, I don't use the word diversity or inclusion. It's all bullshit. Like, it's bullshit, because it actually, what it means is, this is the norm, and we'll let a few of you in to join the norm. What we're trying to do, I think, is get rid of that norm and just create our own norm that we already had, you know? So the norm itself is the problem, not getting people to join the norm, you know?
Yeah.
So I think, so diversity So, like I said, I was the only one there. I was also the first Africa editor, you know, African person writing about the continent. I don't even know where to start when I tell you how big the problem is, because it's like having a conversation with her. No, the problem is huge. So the thing is that yes, there are some things changing. I mean, it's not like newspapers don't understand.
I know.
The business of being a little bit woke, you know, just a few of those flavors is already. What is it?
No, I think it's a simple answer to your question. It's the magazine, basically.
Yeah. So
the magazine doesn't write about daily news.
Exactly.
And for example, I read the NRC Handelsblad. I also received the weekendeditie.
Yes.
And I love reading the opinion section. But still over there, I think it's not diverse.
Yeah, and that's not going to change. I'm going to tell you, it's not going to change because it's about self-preservation in the end, right?
Yeah.
So if it's not in your interest to change, you're not going to change.
Yeah.
If most of your readership is of the dominant group, there's no need for you to change. If people paying your bills are the ones that look like you, why would you change? So the changes that they make are mostly cosmetic. It's mostly, we're going to put a few people that, I had that part at some point. I was a columnist, and it's like, oh, she can have a little or a little, radical corner in,
like sugarcoating.
It's not sugarcoating, but it's like we're doing our parts, and also you become, of course, a person that is used to be like, but we have Seada, what more do you want from us? So yeah, to me, it's the change is not going to happen over there. I have made my peace with that.
Okay.
So sorry, we're going to time. Thank you for your question, for your input.
Part of the change is already there.
Yes.
This is
Can you speak in the mic?
we see the shift.
We see a shift, as in the change won't happen within those structures, right? It's everything that is meant to keep them relevant, which is okay, which is good. But what we see is that there are new outlets like
So
One World, but also
Are you
politically
subscribed to One World?
Not yet.
Okay, so you give your money to NRC, but not to this. This is the change you want. I'm not being harsh towards you, but this is what I'm talking about.
Then maybe money will come in to do daily news. Right?
Exactly, because the more money I get, I will do a daily thing. That's not my problem, But it's about resources. Where do you put your resources? I'm tired of looking at them and being like, why don't you change? It's not going to happen. The money's coming in, so I think it's really about where you direct your money, and if it's.
And it's not just the money, but it's also
okay. But what I do for my daily news these days, okay, that's the last thing.
Yeah.
There's more the economy.
Maybe
The economy.
We can do this after.
Maybe there's another.
Again, like after this talk, when the cameras are off, we can talk and exchange and share ideas as well. But I want to give the audience member and subscribe the opportunity to ask questions based on what they just heard or.
Person who wants to ask a question.
Before I remark,
A remark is welcome as well.
Yes.
Well, listening to all of you talk, and I know two of you and you two well, and we have these conversations often, obviously we do. But something, maybe because I was outside in Semana, I didn't hear it, but it's something that I kind of missed is like this topic of what is seen as legitimate as well, and where that's how also we put our money somewhere and what we see as legitimate. I think you kind of touched upon that, like why do you not see me as legitimate and why do you ask me if this is real or not? And I think we need to, not now because we don't have time, but I think we need to have those types of conversations as well if we're talking about do we even want to start new institutions in the way that we know them right now? I think the answer is obviously no, but I think that is a conversation that also needs to be made because we're humans and we kind of have this referentiekader of things we already know. And I think what I hear Malique really saying as well, and I know the night shop, I think that's also part of the thing, is that making things relevant or seeing it as legitimate next to like these parallel worlds that have been living next to each other. And that's just kind of the remark that I wanted to make, because money flows where we also see things as legitimate. And that's where our capital goes to as well. That's where we invest our thoughts as well. So I think that's something that I just wanted to add. Yeah.
Anyone else? Someone in the back?
Okay, I'm just going to take one or two more questions and then we have to wrap it up. So I saw one hand over there.
Don't give people the mic because they're going to...
No, I'm going to stand up.
So one and another person? Maybe?
There must be something.
I don't know if this question makes sense, but so you started with saying that we want to be our own norm and we don't want to always have to be in resistance, resisting against what everyone else thinks the norm should be for us. But then it also came up that people will walk into your shop and ask you whether your clothing is legitimate, and that probably has to do with the color of the skin, color of your skin, because they wouldn't ask someone else, in another shop that question. So isn't it that you're also every day do just have to resist, because people will, by default question you, because that's, that's how they view African people, or that's the idea they have, and they will always question you. So, can you really get rid of that consciousness in your head, or you have to resist every single day, even if you don't want to, right?
Who are you asking?
Anyone? Yeah, of course, it's something it is, the whole double consciousness thing is, of course, always present. So I'm not oblivious to that. It's just different if you always act on it, if you base your decisions on it, if you base your work and your choices on it. That's different. It's about how much do you invest in it. I think it's about, I think that was supposed to be a Toni Morrison quote. I don't know if this was the quote, but she has a very famous quote. Okay, so there's a very...
We'll end with it.
Okay, there's a famous Toni Morrison quote that I won't say now, I guess. Okay, which is about how the very function of racism is distraction. It's about distracting us from what we are supposed to be doing, what we really want to do. And I think this is what I'm trying to resist. I'm trying to resist racism becoming my occupation. This is not my occupation. This is not why I'm here. This is not why I'm. Even the conversations amongst each other. At some point, I had to tell some of my friends, I don't want to talk about this anymore. How was your day? I don't want this to be the center or the connection between us, because that is really not even where I'm from. It's not even what my life is about or what my heritage is about. So we had those discussions, right, about how we should be talking about what we're creating. We should be talking about what unites us. And what unites us is not just resistance, because if that's what it is, I think limited things will come out of that. You understand what I mean? And not things that will bring us joy and bring us satisfaction and growth.
Thank you. I think there's just something you want to add?
I want to thank everyone. Because like Malique said, you usually don't go to these things anymore. So I'm happy, and I know you don't either. And so thank you for being here, because I know that these conversations are tiring sometimes, but I'm happy that you shared, because this is all recorded, and for us from Afrispectives, it's important that we, like I said in the break, growing up, I didn't have role models from the same country. Like, we all look up to America and all of the role models, which are nice role models, but it's nice to hear people that grew up here, that have the same reference, doing the things that we imagine doing but never really take the step of doing. So for us it's really important that we're documenting this for next generations to see and be like, okay, let's do this. Because the next generation is coming, right? They have to deal with us, but wait for the next generation. That's always in the back of my mind, because if these are your role models, then you know the next generation will do other stuff that we cannot even imagine. So thank you for this time that you.
Thank you for organizing.
Subscribe if you want to see the magazine. You can come here. If you want to. Did you bring something? What's that?
Yes, I have a new publication that I made yesterday. And I was like, oh my God. So, it's not mine. But
you do have publications.
Yes.
On your website?
Nigel on Instagram.
Cool.
NITE@concreteblossom.com if you want to talk.
And maybe you can also start selling.
Yes. I just told him.
That would be okay. Cool.
So there are collaborations in the making here, and this also.
Yeah, I think one of my reporters is about to contact you.
Perfect. That's what we wanted. Nice.
The quote.
Oh, the quote.
Okay, we'll end with this quote by Nourhussen. This is a quote that I read a lot because it keeps me focused.
And it says, the very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. Someone says you have no language and you spend 20 years proving that you do. Someone says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Someone says you have no art, so you dredge that up. Someone says you have no kingdoms, you dredge that up. And none of this is necessary. There always be one more thing. And that was the quote. Thank you.
And thank you, big thank you to the panelists, and also thank you to Leiden Shores as well, who want to have some final closing remarks since this is the last event of the Leiden Shores Festival. So
thank you. I wanted to thank you all for coming. And so this was indeed the last talk on a series of discussion around Dutch multicultural society. If you haven't seen the previous ones, they've all been recorded. We've had wonderful conversation about Dutch grassroots movements and multimedia makers, and so this as well as the previous talks will be available. And thank you very much both for hosting this discussion and organizing everything. Very much appreciated. Thank you for coming.